I woke up to the view of snow-covered mountain top from the port of Akureyri, Iceland. The port ground crew were already at work, mooring and securing the ship to its berth. It was September 8, 2006. Several tour motorcoats were also coming in to be ready for passengers to disembark and take them on their pre-arranged tour activities.
My colleague Dale at the back is going to lead you out through the atrium, down the forward stairs to the gangways on deck 4 and 5. They will guide you
In
down
the ship's
there.
Vista Lounge, I waited with the others for instructions and orderly disembarkation. It didn't take long, and soon we were led off to the gangway. On this cloudy and drizzly day, nothing prevented us from taking this one-day excursion to visit a few sites in Akureyri. As we walked to our assigned motorcoats, we were hopeful that this weather would turn for the better later on at all our scenic tour stops. This is Scully, our tour guide for the day, collecting our passes as we got on the motorcoats.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your guide today, and welcome to Akureyri. My name is Skúli Torfason, and our driver today is August Sigurðsson. We are going
Immediately after leaving the dockside, Scully started his usual introductions to the crowd. This was followed by some information for us to learn, including the local industries and religion about Akureyri. It sounded like we would have plenty of time on the road while heading to our first tour stop. The view along the way would have been nicer, with better weather to see the hills and treeless countryside. Iceland is said to be the country of glaciers and hot springs with natural beauty and geological wonders. The first wonders we saw would be the few waterfalls in the mountains on my side.
Time now is 8:30, and 10 minutes before 9 o'clock the bus will leave for the other side.
The Godafoss Waterfall, also called the Waterfall of the Gods, was our first scenic stop, and we were given 40 minutes to stay around and enjoy the view. The timing was perfect because the rain had stopped when we got off the motorcoats. We would soon learn that lots of the water on the waterfall come from the glaciers. Scully pre-warned us to be careful when walking around the edge of the waterfall. The Godafoss name marks the historical event that took place at these falls in the year 1000, when a chieftain made a public declaration in favor of Christianity by throwing his carvings of the pagan gods into the falls. Godafoss was a picture-perfect waterfall. I couldn't leave this beautiful place without taking my picture with it. And everyone wanted their pictures too. For a while, and for the time we had, people were at awe while enjoying the view and listening to the sound of the falling water. I took my time going around the edges for the best picture and good video footage. At different angles, the view looked more amazing. The waterfall was mostly surrounded by what looked like lava rocks. Not wanting to slip and fall off the cliffs, I had to watch my steps when walking on uneven rocks. It was our first stop, and not a good idea to fall off the cliffs at this moment of time. When I noticed that most of us had already left for the walk to the other side, I realized it was time for me to move on, feeling satisfied that I had enough material that I could enjoy watching sometime in the future. I soon followed the trails to catch up with the group, and then crossing the bridge to meet up with them. From the bridge, the view of the waterfall flow was just as amazing. With some time to spare, I couldn't help but take a last look and imagine myself swimming in this cold Icelandic water. I felt like I didn't want to leave this place and just sit around for a few more minutes, but I had to go. It was really sad to say goodbye to this beautiful place. Back on the motorcoach, I noticed one of us decided to pick and bring a plant to take home for souvenir. Everyone was accounted for, and we were ready to roll for the next stop.
We are now on our way back to go to the old farm.
On our way to an old farm in the countryside, Scully put out his musical instrument to entertain us by playing the waltz. It seemed to calm everyone, and it was easy listening for this group of young people that I ended up joining. Along the way, in this treeless countryside, we passed by some kind of a lake and the grassy hills, and observed some snow in the mountain. There were no settlement around. We also encountered a few bumpy roads while the music playing continued until we arrived at our next stop, the Laufas Farm. When we got off the motorcoats, a few of the Icelandic horses were already waiting for us. Old and rusty tractors and farming equipment were on display in the area. And then we walked straight to the large turf farmhouses that dates back to 1866. Originally, up to 30 people lived here. Today, the complex has been perfectly preserved and is open as a museum. The earlier tour group were already coming out of these ancient-looking houses when we got there, and we had to wait for our turn to explore the interior. Inside were the original furnishings, household items and utensils, and agricultural implements. The rooms were really small. It was even hard to get some good wide-angle pictures of the rooms. The beds are quite short because it was thought in the olden days that it was healthier to sleep in an upright position. In the corridors, we had to watch our steps a little bit. Natural lights come in through the small windows. We also went down below, where I felt like being in an underground bunker where we took turns to come in some areas. We walked through to find the bride's chamber where brides prepared themselves for the wedding event. And finally, we reached the better furnished front room where a cat naps comfortably near the souvenir shop.
Shopping place.
A short walk from the farmhouse was a small church that was built in 1865. I went inside to take a look. This church was one of the most impressive of its time, and it contains a pulpit with wood carvings from 1698. After taking a few pictures, I noticed that no one was around anymore, and I suspected the rest of my group had already left.
I don't see anybody. Well, except the young fellow with our same shirt on.
It was time to get back before someone started looking for me. But first, I wanted to take a last look at the surrounding area and the mountains further out. Back on the road again, I found myself proudly wearing my souvenir hat to remind myself of my visit to the Laufas Farm. It was a pleasant drive along the fjord back to Akureyri, and a good time to learn from Scully about the Icelandic population.
And the people in Iceland, they live around the coastline. Iceland is not inhabitable in the middle, where we have the glaciers and so we did. So this is
A few pictures were also brought by Scully to show around.
the river in here in the winter, yes. So it's nice.
Our next stop was a viewpoint overlooking Actuary, and our cruise ship docked at the port across the fjord. It was very windy, but where we stood was quite a view, and everyone took their best shot for posterity's sake.
Okay. And
Continuing with our tour, Scully talked about the mountains.
and also the mountain range there up above Akureyri. All these peaks have a name, and every farm in Iceland has a name. And
I also started seeing trees along the road, and then there was our ship again sitting out there and waiting for us. But first, we have more places to visit in Akureyri.
This house here to the right. Every year they give an award here in this town for the best kept lawn and the nicest house.
We slowed down when we got in town to learn about the housing and surrounding buildings, like the church, the museum, and the ice skating stadium.
Nice guy. Now here's one of the old country churches that was brought into this town, and this is the museum here of Akureyri. And here coming in front of us is an ice skating stadium, and they have a hockey team here in Akureyri. They do good here in Iceland.
On the side of the road, I noticed the pipelines, which Scully described as to what they were for.
And now here you can see the hot water pipeline here coming into Akureyri to your left. And this is just hot water being pumped into Akureyri from natural hot wells.
Just before noon, we got off the motor coach to visit the Botanical Gardens. We started from the back entrance and I followed the crowd, not knowing where we were going to end up. Even down here, it was still a bit windy, and the sky still covered with clouds, but lucky to have no rain as we walked the garden paths. In here was the most tourists I've seen since we landed at Actuary. They seemed to be celebrating and thanking us for the visit. Our walking tour started in the small plants area, and all plants seemed to have been tagged and labeled. In the flower section was where most people took their time admiring the colorful petals. It was time to take out those cameras, the small ones and bigger ones. We like to take flower pictures, the purple ones, the white ones, or the red ones. Scully mentioned earlier that there were over 4,000 plant species here with a variety of nearly every plant in Iceland, an extensive collection of high latitude and high altitude plants from around the world. Looking back at the dock and a short distance from the garden gates was our ship that seemed to tell us to take our time. Later on, it was at the front gate that we saw Scully waiting for us to board back on the motor coach. Our visit to Akureyri continued as we drove around for the view of the main town. Scully pointed out the different landmarks.
The old soccer field here of the town here. Soccer is a popular sport here in Iceland. And
closer to the dock was the newer part of the town. It was at this time that we concluded our guided morning tour with a plan to walk back to town in the afternoon after our break for lunch on board the ship.
Okay, we are back here on your ship, and I wish you a good journey. And this is the best place in Iceland, right here. Thank you for the day.
The strong wind had not died down when I decided that it was time to walk and visit the town of Akureyri on my own. It was still cold, but it was only a few minutes walk. When in town, I noticed many cruisers hanging around the souvenir shop. It wouldn't hurt to check it out, and maybe on the way back later. The husbands were waiting outside, while the wives were busy spending money inside. This was a small town, and an ideal place to explore on foot. A little further across the street, and in the center of the city, was the prominent Akureyri Lutheran church at the top of the hill. It was not open for tourism business, as most of us found out after taking all those steps up to the front door. Viewing from the top of the hill, there it was again, our ship reminding me that it hadn't left without me. It was another view of the town from a different angle. Along the main street in town center is a brightly painted blue building, a local favorite coffee house. It seemed to be having a very slow day with the rest of the shops in Akureyri. And later, returning to the tax-free souvenir shop, I walked inside to notice that the store's floor was covered with laminated coins. In the corner, a fully armed troll was smiling at us. This shop was where most of the cruisers spent more time looking for all kinds of Icelandic souvenirs, postcards, keychains, all kinds of craft works, and more. The Viking mascot in front of the shop attracted plenty of attention, and most everyone wanted to have their pictures taken with it. We had a little fun, taking turns snapping our pictures.
There you go.
After the town visit, we headed back to the dock and took our few last Kodak moment while still on the shore of Akureyri. And soon, it was time to rejoin the ship for our departure, bringing with us plenty of memories of Akureyri. The Akureyri experience was short, but equally vivid, memorable, and enjoyable. After the ship was swung around, the tugboat let it go for the continuation of our journey to our next port of call.
We should be arriving on time tomorrow, and even with a delayed departure, we should still be okay for our arrival time in Iceland Fjord tomorrow.